According to science, the time when Homo sapiens, or human beings, emerged is 300,000 years ago. From a religious perspective, this period is 10 to 12,000 years ago. Let's be optimistic and accept it as 10,000 years. According to scientific data, the world's population today is 8 billion, but 10,000 years ago the population was 80 million, that is, the same as the population of today's Turkey, and the average growth rate was 1.7%. When I tried to confirm this data by entering it into the AI tool, the answer it gave me was, it is not possible to calculate. I asked if it could give an average figure, this time it answered, 144 quadrillion. Look, he said the average is 144 quadrillion. How much is it in total, you think? Even if we accept the average, there are 9,600 people per 1,000 square meters. So, this information given to us is not correct. Again, I asked the eye, assuming descent from Adam and his wife, if the population was currently 2 people, what would it be 10,000 years later with a 1.7% growth rate? The answer it gave was 3 billion people. In other words, the total population of today's China and India. Since the population is currently 8 billion, this information is also wrong. So if the population is 8 billion today, how many would it have been 10,000 years ago? I asked. His answer was 1,000. This means that the origin was not only between Adam and his wife. A group of approximately 1,000 people 10,000 years ago started a new life here. Just like in the Westworld series. So it may be true that we were exiled here, as written in the holy books. In other words, there really was a celestial war and the devil and his group, who lost the war, may have been exiled here. If we were to accept the 300,000 years determined by science and have it calculated, it would mean that there should be a septillion, perhaps a decillion, as many as the number of stars humans. When I last asked the artificial intelligence, what was the world population 10,000 years ago? Without entering any data, it replied, between 1 and 10 million. When this is the case, the result again comes out as incalculable. Now you will tell me that a clear calculation cannot be made due to factors such as death and birth rates, wars, diseases, etc. Yes, this is true, it cannot be calculated exactly, but by using logic, the actual numbers can be found with a small margin of error. In other words, there is actually no need for such complicated calculations. The population was 3 billion in 1961. It became 8 billion in 2022. In other words, it increased by 5 billion in 61 years. If it can increase so much in such a short time, just think about what will happen in 2,000 years. As life expectancy increases, the population also increases. For example, a girl born today will give birth in 20 years, but this mother who gives birth today will die in 40 years. If this mother gives birth to 2 children today and her offspring only have 1 child each, 8 more people will have been added to the population by the time she dies. This is a very high rate. I can't even think of families with 5 to 10 children. So, it is logically necessary to reset the world at certain intervals. I think this period is once every 2,150 years. It is written in the Bible that there was a massacre and harvest during the time of Jesus. If this is true, there was a massacre during that period and they accepted it as a milestone beginning and reduced the world population. In the Georgia columns, it is written that the world population should be reduced to 500 million. If the population was reduced to 500 million at that time, with a 1% population growth rate, the total population should be 10 billion after 2,000 years. This calculation is logical and comes out to be close to today's population number. In short, in this world's life, which we accept as 10,000 years according to today's data, I think there have been 5 harvests and each time the population has been reduced to 500 million, which is the total population of America and Russia. The world entered the age of Pisces with Jesus. This age will enter its end period starting in 2025 and a new age, the Age of Aquarius, will begin in 2150. In other words, since the population increases by more than 7 billion every 2,000 years, if the harvests had not been done 10,000 years later, that is, today, the world population should be around 38 billion. And if these harvests had not been made, the world population, which is 8 billion today, would have been 939 billion in 2000 years with a 1.5% increase rate, and 1.7 trillion with a 1.7% increase rate. It is estimated that there is approximately 15 million square kilometers of habitable land on Earth. This area is slightly more than the entire continent of Antarctica. Imagine that 1.7 trillion people live on this continent. Friends, I know you are confused, but the data is clear. Today's population is known, the average population growth rate is known. According to these rates, it would not be unreasonable for the probable population of 2000 years ago to be 500 million. In some of my other videos, since I thought that the harvest and the apocalypse were the same thing, I was giving the dates as 2023 or 2150. This is relatively correct, but I realized that the Supreme Mind Council was controlling the world population with two types of destruction practices. The first is the Big Harvest. In other words, they reduce the world population to around 500 million every 2150 years. The second is with small apocalypses, in other words, as in the examples of the destruction of nations that we know. With this, they prevent the rapid acceleration of the population growth rate. We can give an example from the history close to the mini-apocalypse, the earthquake of February 2023. I have explained in my other videos that this earthquake was artificial and who created it and why, and I had announced that a destruction would come back in 2018. Of course, many people made fun of me. Many people said I was spreading negative energy, but now I see that the issues I brought up 5 years ago are only now being brought up. What happened? I thought I was the bad guy. In 2018, I wrote an article called, "Your Last 5 Years, You Will Be Trash in 5 Years." Many people made fun of that article, but as you can see, exactly 5 years later, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, of people became trash. Sad face. Since the big harvest is not in 2023, it means that the process of entering the new era will have to wait. In other words, a reset will definitely be made sometime between 2025 and 2150. It doesn't matter to me whether you believe it or not or whether you make fun of it. I read hundreds of books, magazines, articles, etc., do research and think about the possibilities. Then I share my thoughts with you. You can either take this seriously and evaluate it, or you can make fun of it and continue sleeping. This world is not our world, and if you cannot discover and learn this world, you will reproduce, be born, grow, work and die just like a sheep goyim. As I finish my video, I also want to say something about the apocalypse. Qiyamah has many meanings. Rising, standing, dwelling, value, price, people, etc. In the Quran, this word is used as Yevmul Qiyamah, meaning judgment day, and its meaning in the verse is gathering, day of reckoning. 47 We will set up scales of justice on the day of resurrection. No injustice will be done to anyone, even if it is the weight of a mustard seed. We will bring it forth, and we suffice as accountants. Judgment Day is not used in the sense of disasters, destructions that will bring the end of the world, but rather in the sense of the period when people will come together and the accounts will be settled. This event is the same as the psychostasis in ancient Egypt. I told you in my other videos that the Quran describes the ancient Egyptian civilization. So, like other concepts taught to us, this concept of the Day of Judgment is also different. Yes, as it is said in the Bible, do gods with animal masks come from the clouds? I don't know if they will gather people on the Day of Judgment, do their reckoning and then reap a harvest, but if these events had not happened, why would they have been included in the books?